welcome back to Astaghfirullah. What another video? When's the last time we recorded a video, bro? I really tried another video, you know, another way. Cheat. Well, it's a cheat.
Yes.
We're back after a long time, and what a way to come back with a superstar guest, none other than Iman.
Wow, subhanAllah, guys, I am not a superstar, but thank you so much for having me. Honestly, more than anything, I just feel so honored to have been invited to this, to be honest.
Now, we're honored that you're here, like, mashallah.
The fact that you're willing to come to Birmingham.
Wow.
Yeah.
To Birmingham.
Listen, you can't stand the Birmingham slander now.
Listen, this is not slander, okay?
Okay.
Really, what I'm trying to say is, obviously, Birmingham is the best city in the world, isn't it? Okay, never mind, UK is the best city in the world. It's, alhamdulillah, if anything, it's a privilege for you to come to Birmingham.
Is it? Wow.
See,
I highly disagree.
She said no comment. Iman,
Yeah.
thank you so much for agreeing to come down. Honestly,
so
it's a
much
pleasure
for
to have
having
you. We're really looking forward to this conversation today.
Yes, so am I.
This is someone who, very young and tender age, mashallah, she's accomplished so much, and she's doing so much. So it will be fascinating to have a conversation with you and kind of explore that journey and how you got to where you got to and the things that you're doing and all the rest of it. So thanks again for agreeing to come. And that takes us away.
Mashallah, like, all right, let's just go through quickly her CV.
Very quickly.
And I won't do it justice.
You will never do it justice.
Never.
Will you send this to my dream company?
Absolutely, yeah, don't worry.
We need to put dramatic music behind it,
right? So, she's a polyglot, 5+ languages. Okay. I say plus because
I need to put
mashallah,
tabarakallah, mashallah.
Yeah.
5+.
5+.
I didn't realize the human brain had the capacity to learn that many languages.
Yeah.
And some of the languages in there, like we can learn.
They're not your average ones, so they're not like language that's similar. And it's like it's easy one. Yeah.
No, it's not them. Yeah. So polyglot, mashallah. She studies architectural engineering. Yeah. Mashallah. She is a youth worker, like works with the masjid, inspiring the next generation, mashallah. And like she's moved away from home, which is something we know about. It is stress.
It is.
Trust me, like if you can do that and still do things on the side and not just focus on yourself, that itself is impressive. You know what I mean? Because listen. We know how hard it was. Well, we're not going to talk about the meals we used to have.
We're not going to talk about that because we don't want people to get sick.
That's true.
subhanAllah.
Well, yeah, welcome. Well,
Thank you so much.
Listen, that was an executive summary.
Yeah.
Didn't do justice, but we'll get into it today, inshallah.
No, it didn't.
And to start, Iman, with I think the most standout thing from all those things, or at least the one that maybe is not very common amongst kind of our generation and people from our backgrounds, the polyglot thing. Yeah, so 5+ languages.
Yeah.
So first of all, what's the final number?
Okay, so I speak. I was born and raised in Sweden, so I speak Swedish.
Yeah.
Somali because I'm Somali, and English because I was taught in school.
Okay.
And then after that we have Korean, that I self-taught myself through watching Korean dramas and just Korean shows, and we have Spanish. Okay. So these are the ones that I'm most confident in. And then after that we have just a bit of Japanese, and I'm currently studying Arabic. And at one time I was studying Chinese, Mandarin, but inshallah I'm thinking once I get a good level of all these other languages, then I'll just keep adding on to that.
So to Mandarin, and then the oral.
So those are the languages.
Mashallah, tabarak. Obviously, ¿cómo estás? Bien. Iman, just to kind of explore that, a bit further. Where did your love for languages come? And did you find that it came to you easier, or was it something that you had to work out really hard? Did you have a process?
I feel like one thing I've heard before and definitely been told is that if you know your mother tongue well, then learning other languages is easier.
Okay.
And also growing up, because I was born and raised in Sweden, English is not my first language. English for me is like my third language. But I remember I was very much into learning English when I was younger. So even like in my class groups and my year and stuff like that, my English was always better than theirs. And it was because I was also always just trying to speak it. Learning more, watching a lot of like American TV shows and stuff like that. So I feel like it probably started from English, because if my English wasn't that good, I don't think I would have been able to even think about learning another language. And then when I started watching Korean dramas, I never once in my life thought that, okay, because I was into anime way before I was into Korean stuff. So
Gang.
yeah. Okay. So I used to like watch so much anime, but I you know how Japanese and anime, it's not your standard Japanese, but at the same time you can catch, because it's very like over exaggerated voices and stuff like that, we can still catch onto like a few words and stuff like that. So one thing that was very shocking to me was that I learned Korean and picked up Korean way faster than I ever picked up on Japanese. So watching anime for years and then getting into K-drama, I just never thought I would even pick up on Korean. So yeah, that was a shock, wallahi, that I even started understanding a few things. So as soon as I noticed, I think maybe 8 months into watching K-dramas, I just started saying Korean words, and then I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. And then after that, I just paid more attention as I was watching, and then
You're doing Arabic right now, right?
Yes.
So once you're finished with Arabic, how are you going to choose your next language?
Okay, so I'm doing Arabic and I'm also doing Spanish
at the same time.
Yeah, right now. Yeah, so I'm doing a Spanish course, and the reason I'm doing Spanish is because my Spanish, compared to Korean, I understand more than I can speak. So, and I find that very frustrating because a Spanish speaker can come to me and talk to me, but I'm not as confident to speak back to them as much as I would want to, you know? So what I did was I went online and I looked up online courses, but through Sweden, because I was able to continue my high school, basically when I was doing my A-levels.
Because that's how you did the Spanish in the first place.
That's how I did Spanish in the first place, but I learned more Spanish through watching TV.
Okay.
So I was watching a lot of Spanish TV shows as well. In December, actually, I was rewatching this one TV show I was watching like 10 years ago, and it has like 190 episodes, okay? 192 or 93, but this website that I found it on, it was only subbed until 40 something episodes.
Okay.
So after that, I watched it without subtitles, and I understood the whole show, and that's when I realized I know so much. Why am I not doing something about it? So what I did was I went back to like I did 3 levels in Sweden. So level 4 is the last one that you can do. So I checked if I could apply for it online. Alhamdulillah, I could, and it's a free course as well. I'm not even paying anything for it. So I did that.
Is that through your kind of schooling over there in
Sweden? In
okay.
Sweden.
So
it's like doing
kind of
my A-level Spanish basically, but the highest level.
Okay.
Like well, American system high school. So it's just high school in Sweden.
Okay.
So I was just like, let me do that, and when I'm done with that course, then I can go on to like leveling up and stuff. So with my Spanish teacher, she's absolutely lovely. She noticed that I understand so much more than I can actually speak back. So she was like, okay, Iman, we need to work on your confidence when it comes to speaking, because you actually understand. Because she would tell me to read a whole page in a textbook, and I would translate word by word, letter by letter, like everything. And she's like, okay, you need to start speaking. So now she's challenging me every week to talk about what I've done this week, what I'm going to do the next week and stuff like that. And this actually made me realize that I never thought that one-on-one like tutoring worked for me when it comes to languages. But I was like, okay, maybe it actually works. This is the way. So I think from now on, inshallah, with the watching shows, I'm going to add on to like actually seeking someone to teach me.
Yeah, I think Spanish is out of all the Latin, for me, it's the easiest. Because I've done it in GCSE.
Yeah.
Passed just about.
¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien. I remember the wet saying, and then they had to say, no habla inglés.
No habla inglés.
That's what they were saying.
Yeah.
So it's the easiest out of them, like in terms of Italian, French, Spanish, even Portuguese. I think all of them I think the Spanish is the easiest one.
Yeah, 100%. The only thing that I find hard with the Spanish is the grammar, because the different tenses, like past tense, future tense, because they have so many different ones, and each verb changes depending on who you're talking about, kind of thing, like who's doing what. So that's the confusing part about it.
Okay.
So when it comes to speaking, so I feel like that's literally the only thing that's blocking me right now. But alhamdulillah, other than that, it's such an easy language to understand and pick up on, honestly. So once I finish Spanish, I want to then, because I think that's what you were asking me, what language do I want? Yeah. After I finish Spanish, inshallah, I really want to take on French. I really want to learn
good
French.
luck, one.
I really want to learn French, inshallah. Yeah,
so wasted about whole secondary school on that.
Till
today, or
like, you get
5 years, not a word.
That's what everyone that studies French says. And I'm like,
my
okay.
God. All I remember was écouter, which means listen. Like all of the things the teacher used to say, because we used to mess about. Do you know what I mean? But I think because when you're a kid, like you don't respect or like want to learn languages.
No.
I mean?
And I also feel like the way they teach you at school, it's not a productive way at all. Because I learned more Spanish from TV shows than I did from school. In class. And that's because, I don't know, it was just, everything was just being repeated. The tempo was very slow. It was just, I don't think that's the way someone can learn the language, to be honest. Because you have to actively, like, the things that you learn, you need to talk about them. You need to use those words and stuff like that. And if you're not doing that in a class and you just learn a word and jump to the next one, you're not gonna get what you want out of it.
How good is your Somali?
My Somali is, I would say, okay, so
if you had to rank them.
So okay, I've lived away from home for like 3 years now. Okay,
the excuse is
no, it's not even an excuse. It's actually, I'm ashamed, because my Somali was really, really good. But I feel like that because I've been away from my mom and my dad for so long, it's slowly like getting worse. But alhamdulillah, it's really good. Like even when I speak to elders, they're always like, wow, like for someone that was born and raised in Sweden, Somali is good. And I'm like, no. I'm like,
I think that's what spoils us. I think that's what spoils us. But
I tell them, I'm like, no, it's an embarrassment the way I'm speaking right now, you know. But other than that, alhamdulillah, my Somali, I would say it's good.
So where would you rank it? Like, so not just Somali. I want you to rank all your languages. So I would think Sweden is number one. Swedish is number one.
Yeah, but another thing. I feel like since I was 12, since I was like 14. I was speaking more English than I was speaking Swedish. So I feel like it's gotten to a point. Some people tell me I sound English when I speak. Sometimes, like I have a bit of English. And when I speak Swedish, that I sound a bit. And I'm like, okay, that is very offensive. But my Swedish is good, alhamdulillah. But I definitely sometimes I just feel like it's so bad. But I would say Swedish is number one. Let's say English is number two. Somali would be number three, and then Korean, and then 4, and then Spanish 5, and then
so Korean will be higher than Spanish.
Okay. I can speak way more Korean than I can speak Spanish.
That's amazing.
Okay, that's sick. So what language do you think in?
Do you know, this is actually a very interesting question, because before, when people used to say, oh, what language do you think in? What language do you dream in? I never understood that. I just used to think, that's a weird question to ask. Like, you know, I definitely think in English. I'm not even gonna lie. I know. But there was one time I was thinking in Korean and I was so shocked.
Damn.
I was like, that's the day I understood people actually think and dream in other languages. I've been dreaming in Korean, which is weird. And then sometimes I think in Swedish, and Somali, I guess, I don't know, but I definitely think in English.
I think the language like you use the most.
The most,
is the one.
So I would say English.
Because I mean, you're for most of the year now. You are based in the UK, aren't you?
Yeah. Even in Sweden. Okay, so background story. When I was 12, we moved to Kenya for 2 years. So from 12 to 14, I was living in Kenya.
Missouri sana.
And we didn't live in Nairobi. We lived in a city called Garissa. It's like closer to the Somali
Somali
side.
border,
Yeah. And it's extremely hot, and it's very like, back then, it was very like, it wasn't like it's not a big city at all, basically. And there's a lot of Somalis that live there. So I never really learned Swahili because there was just Somali people.
It's a Somali state.
Yeah, and I went to and I went to an Islamic school, so it was just Somali students. But all my subjects and everything was in English. So when I came back to Sweden after 2 years of studying, like doing everything like with English language, when I came back to Sweden, I just started mixing English and Swedish a lot. So even at school, I didn't notice it myself. At school, sometimes I would speak to my friends, and my friends that would speak to me in English. And then I remember people at my school used to be like, who do you think you are? Like, why do you always speak English? And I used to get so shocked. I was like, oh, like I genuinely do not know this. Even my sister, because my sister, she's 2 years younger than me. So her and I, it was, okay, so the ones that moved to Kenya was my sister and I and my older brother. So it was us three. And my younger brother as well. We're 5 kids. So the youngest one is a girl. She was left at home. So the next youngest one is a boy. So he went with us the first time, but the second time he came back. So it's just us 3. So my older brother, me and my little sister. So her and I, we had each other, right? So every time we would talk, we used to speak in English and Swedish. And sometimes when we would have conversation, we wouldn't remember what language we had that conversation in. Like, that's how much of English that we spoke. So I used to find it so weird that people at school would find it weird. But now it makes sense because obviously it's a Swedish country, like, you know? So they used to think like, who do you think you are? And I was like, I was not a popular kid at all at school, okay? So it was a bit like, okay. I was more like the weirdo because I was the only one that was into anime, into like Korean stuff.
That young as well?
That young, yeah. So everyone at school was all...
We were into anime before it was cool.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Before it was cool.
Yeah. So I was like, even at school, like, people would find me so weird because sometimes in the middle of the class I'll just watch anime and they'd be like, why are you watching cartoon at your big age? And I used to be like, it's not, it's like really good. Do you think I could convince anyone? No. I just had to be the weirdo at school.
Moving on to kind of where you are right now in your journey. So you moved to the UK for university.
To study,
and right now you're studying architectural science.
Architectural engineering.
Engineering, sorry.
Yeah.
Wow, I could have seen worse. So I vaguely know what architecture is. What's architectural engineering and how did you get into it? Because that's a pretty technical and I'm guessing pretty challenging field as well.
Yeah. And I feel like it definitely depends on what uni you go to and like what modules you're doing. Because if I'm not wrong, they do have architectural engineering in London at a university. They have it in Manchester, the one I go to, and then they have it in Sheffield. So when I first moved, I was studying at Sheffield, but the architectural engineering at Sheffield, it was straight up civil engineering. Like everything that we were doing, because I was studying there for a year, and that one was actually a 4-year course. It was an MEng with it as well. And I was always into architecture, so when I wanted to study, I wanted to have the engineering side to it as well, but I wanted to focus also on the design of the buildings and stuff, right? So when I noticed we're not doing any drawings, we're not doing any portfolios, I was like, this is not what I signed up for. So I feel like it definitely depends on what university you go to. So in Sheffield, at Sheffield University, it was straight up civil engineering. All my modules were like Civ this, Civ that, Civ 101, Civ, and then there were a bit of mechanical engineering stuff. Alhamdulillah, I learned so much from that year. But I realized this is not what I want. I want to know how to actually like focus on the construction, on the structure of the buildings. I want to focus on how to design a building as well. And I want more architecture in it. So I was actually thinking of then to just switch over to just architecture. But then I got into the community in Manchester, and then I was like, oh, why don't I move here? And then I seen that Salford University had architectural engineering. So I checked out their course online, and I see that they get to do design studio, which we never got to do in Sheffield. So that's why I went for that one. So the one I'm doing right now, alhamdulillah, it's not as much civil engineering as the one in Sheffield, but we do have, because I'm doing architectural engineering, we do have a just engineering module that us engineering students do within the architecture, and we just focus on basically like how to make a building work, like the structure of a building, because you know when you're an architect you just do the design. Yeah, you don't really care about if this is going to be working, if it's going to fall apart or not. Whereas when you're doing the engineering of it, you actually need to make sure, okay, so this is the design of the building. Where are we gonna put the structural frames, and where are we gonna make sure that this building is not gonna fall apart? You know, the foundation of it, and stuff like that. So that's what I get to learn, which is really interesting, but alhamdulillah it's enjoyable at the same time, because I also get to do the architecture modules, whereas we get to design buildings as well. So not only am I learning how to design a building, but I'm also learning to make sure that the building that I'm designing is safe and can actually stand up, you know. So yeah,
Mashallah.
So that's the engineering side.
That's fascinating. So it's the best of both worlds.
Basically, yeah. So when it comes to searching for a job, inshallah, in the future, someone with an engineering background within architecture, obviously it would make sense. It's most likely to land the job instead of having an engineer and an architect work together. You can have one person doing the same job technically. But then in this field, I feel like in a sense it's a very competitive field as well, because it also depends on your portfolio, so your previous work and stuff like that. So I feel like while you're studying, doing your best is so important, because the same portfolios that you're doing in university is what you're going to be presenting when you're searching for a job.
And people don't know that. That's the problem.
And people don't know that, yeah. And with COVID, I feel like that has become really difficult, because the quality of our work is not as good as it would have been if we were in the studio learning. Because for a year and a half, I've been studying all of this at home, which is honestly not easy at all. And I feel like the quality of my work could have been better if I was in that space of getting the critique that I needed, getting the help that I needed. But alhamdulillah, I'm still enjoying it, alhamdulillah. So,
And how long is that program?
3 years.
It's 3 year program.
3 years, and then obviously, like, if you want to do a master's within architecture, that's 2 years. So if I want to get the title architect and become chartered, I would have to do part 1 of the RIBA, which is the 3 years studying, part 2, which is doing the master's, and then part 3 is the work experience plus doing an examination after that as well.
Okay.
So in total, to become an architect, it takes 7 years.
So that's where the 7 years comes in.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what
okay.
It splits up.
Okay, so
Because
stages.
It's stages. Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was 7 years of uni. I was like,
No. So it's like technically 5 years of uni,
Yeah.
but 2 years of working.
I remember I once looked into architecture.
Yeah.
Did you?
I looked into it.
You looked
That's
at
what 7 years. No, I thought like I couldn't draw.
Yeah.
I thought like.
That's the thing, you don't have to be. One thing I realized while studying was that you don't have to be the best at drawing.
Yeah.
You know, me, alhamdulillah, when it comes to drawing, I'm okay. I wouldn't say I'm an artist, but one thing I understood throughout studying was that everyone has their own drawing style. You know, and you're not out here to make
Picasso.
Literally, wallah, that's exactly what I was going to say. You're not out here to be like a world famous artist, you know, and you need to understand that your style is unique to you, you know, and you have your own touch to everything when it comes to sketching and stuff. So, and I learned that the hard way, because I am such a perfectionist that if I'm not happy with it, I'm just like, okay, this is not it. But then I had to learn to love the way I do my work, you know? So you don't have to be that amazing at drawing. You just have to be able to explain what you've drawn. You just need to be able to present your work and just show something.
People have to understand this vision in your brain.
Yeah,
like,
and
on
you
the
just
paper.
put it. Yeah. And then, which is one thing my tutors actually made me understand, because sometimes they show us slideshows of different students' work. So you see a student using maybe digital software to draw, a few students hand drawings and stuff. And some of the drawings you would think are so basic, but when you look at them, they've got all the details that are needed in there, you know? And that is more valuable to them than a drawing with like, whoa, shapes, colors that are out of this world, like, you know what the, you know, because you just have to be able to draw something. When I understood that, I was like, so my work doesn't need to be whoa, I just have to show like what I'm explaining, and they just need to understand your design, and they need to understand what you're doing. But yeah, there's so many things that I learned like the hard way. And also, when I was saying you don't need to be really good at drawing, it's because there's technology. When it comes to doing like floor plans and stuff like that, I don't know who does floor plans by hand nowadays when you're actually working. Maybe people that love like the quality of their work to be like, you know, or just want to take extra time. But you have softwares like AutoCAD, Revit, you know, SketchUp, to make like floor plans, to make 3D models, to make structural plans and stuff like that. So, and all of those things you get to learn while you're at uni, so you don't really have to be able to know how to draw. And even now there's softwares that you can render like you can put any furniture in a room and make it look like real life, you know, which is sick, you know. So when it comes to like even interior and stuff, you don't need to be drawing every single thing by hand.
Just place it.
You can just place it in your model and stuff. Yeah.
Listen, do you sometimes get kind of lost in it? It'd be like, you have a room and I want to decorate it this way, and then just get lost in the interior design.
Sometimes, yeah. So I feel like I might in the future switch over. If you guys see me doing interior in the future, don't be surprised. Don't say nothing, I'm out here supposed to focus on like the structural details, and I'm like, oh my god, this room.
The wallpaper, let me change it.
Yeah. Oh my god, I'll show you guys a few renderings I was doing recently after this, inshallah. But yeah, definitely you just get so. And I'm the kind of person, I love doing things and having like a start to finish and just seeing the whole process of it and the final result. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why I got into this field. Because it's all about start to finish and then the final product.
100%.
We need someone like her.
Not only do we not know any architects, plenty of engineers, but not only do we not know any architects, but the fact that a young Muslim hijabi community is in our background is representing in this kind of field that's incredibly, not to say exclusionary, but you know, there's not a lot of people from our backgrounds in this kind of field. I'm sure when you're in your classrooms, you don't see people that look like.
Not only that, Sheffield especially, okay. When I came there first, I remember not only was I the only hijabi, but I was the only black girl in that whole like lecture, and there was a bunch of students, okay. And I was like, damn, there's no diversity over here. But alhamdulillah, Manchester, alhamdulillah, have a couple of Muslim sisters. Yeah, I think I'm the only Somali girl in my year, but other than that, it's very diverse, which I love. But when I was younger and I was thinking about architecture, I didn't know anyone that was into it. I remember it was such a fascinating thing to me, but then it's a far dream. Yeah, and whoever I would tell, like, oh, I want to be an architect, they'd be like, oh, what is that? You know, especially, I don't know, especially in Sweden, I don't think a lot of people were talking about it back then. And then I remember one time I made a friend that was also studying architecture, and I was like so amazed because I was like, I don't know anyone in my life that's even into this. Even this was like way before I started studying. So yeah, especially like us, you don't see a lot of that.
What does the community think about like a Somali girl or a Muslim girl? I would say Somali because, you know, there's a certain field like they want everyone to go into, right?
Yeah.
So what's their perspective on like you going into engineering?
Okay,
being a
so
girl,
we'll leave the community out of the way. Let's talk about my dad. Okay.
One step at a time.
So my dad, Allahumma barik, my dad is an amazing guy. He when it comes to the academics, he's Allahumma barik, he was always like at the top of it. Even back in Somalia, when he came to Sweden, mashallah. He's an author as well, so he writes books, Somali books and stuff like that. Very well known guy as well. But anyways, he was like, Iman, like growing up, he was always like, you got leadership skills, you got this and that, you're really good at talking, you should pursue journalism, you should pursue like a bunch of other stuff, you know? He would tell me so many things, and I used to be like, oh wow, that sounds cool. And then I told my dad, I'm like, I want to get into architecture. And he was a bit like,
what?
I swear that's for men. But alhamdulillah, my dad is not like, he's a very open guy, mashallah. So for him, it wasn't like, no, that's for men, you can't do that. He was like, it's a very male dominated. Are you sure you want to get into this, you know?
And he's not wrong.
Yeah. And I was just like, yeah, I really want to get into this. And he was like, okay, but Iman, you're good at this, you know. And then he'd be like, you know, sometimes you don't see what you're good at, other people can see it. So it's like, I'm just going to tell you everything that you're good at. And that is so funny, wallahi. So every time he would come up with other things that I was good at and be like, oh, do this, do that. And subhanAllah, like growing up, architecture was the only thing I never let go of. One time I wanted to study medicine, I wanted to become a lawyer, I wanted to be so many different things. But all those things I could easily just forget about and drop them. But when it came to construction and just designing buildings and stuff like that, it was just something I was always like, this is what I want. Yeah, so fascinated by it. So in the end, when I told him I'm gonna go ahead and study it, he was like, okay, mashallah. And then he was like, yeah, we need more people like you anyways. And then now every day he's like, oh, I got a few projects in Somalia you can work on. He's like, oh, I was out with this uncle and this auntie that day. And then he would just tell me about people. And then he was like, oh, Iman, when you come here, when you come to Ethiopia, when you come to Somalia, we're doing this, we're doing that. And I'm like, okay, Abba. So
he's ready. He's
out here plugging in his future projects. Allah. So alhamdulillah, he's so supportive of it. And he just can't wait to see me finish and like just start working within it and like help back home and stuff like that. So yeah, he's very supportive. As for the community, I really don't know what view they have on it. I've not really One thing I do know though is from my city, there weren't in Sweden, I don't think there were a lot of people that were even into architecture. So I feel like it was a thing, they were like, oh, okay, and then they would move on, kind of thing, you know. So yeah.
But I feel like Sweden is a bit different to maybe UK. I feel like Sweden is a bit more forward thinking, like maybe also I don't know, but from what I've seen going to Sweden and they're focused on their own thing. Where if you say I'm going to university to do this, they're like
do you know what I mean? Literally that's kind of like the response I would get. And Sweden is also a kind of country, how do I say it? They have this thing called Jantelagen, which is the Jante rule, the Jante law, and it's like Swedish people, they don't boast about anything. They don't really praise you for anything either. Everyone's got to be the same and equal, which is good to a certain extent, but sometimes it becomes very weird because you don't get acknowledged when you do something great. It's a bit like, you shouldn't talk about this. That's why in Sweden you wouldn't know who has money and who doesn't have money.
It's a Scandinavian thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very Scandinavian thing. So when it comes to, even as for the university, you know how in the UK you guys have different like universities, you have Russell Group, this and that. In Sweden we don't have that. Like you just graduate and you graduate from whatever uni you're from. You don't really have different ranks in the universities. The only thing that would make it different is if you're studying in a bigger city or a smaller city. But it's a good thing though, because you wouldn't feel like your social status is lower than anyone else's, which is good in that sense.
And the pressure is not there in terms of as a youngster. I think for us in year 6 we were taught about how SATs is very important and you can't fail. Then we got to year 9 and it was about SATs again. Then we got to GCSEs and it was like you need to not fail. So growing up, we didn't even enjoy it. 100%. Every 2 years, we've got a group of exams that you cannot fail. If you do fail, you're separated from your peers.
But do you know, this is so interesting now that you're saying that, because I was having this conversation with my younger brother now in Sweden, and we're talking about how we don't like the Swedish school system because you don't have that pressure of doing well. Okay, so I feel like. So before I moved here, I took a gap year after I finished school in Sweden, and I was working as a teacher at a school. So I was teaching maths and physics, and at that school, the kids were like between 14 to 16-year-olds, and I was 19 at that time. So the oldest lot, I was just 3 years older than them, so the age difference wasn't that much. And one thing I noticed with the children at that school was that they didn't aim high; they were fine with just passing, and I just found that so sad, because I was like, why are you guys not competing when it comes to, because I remember when I was in their year, we were always like competing at like who had a better grade, who did better at what subject and stuff like that. And I seen that these kids, they were satisfied with the lowest grades, they were satisfied with just passing, and then after that they go on to high school, like which is when you guys do A levels, and for us it's 3 years. So in those 3 years you do 25 different courses. Like no, you guys do A levels, just 4 subjects. For us it's like you do maths, history, English, and all them subjects. But then you specialize either if you want to do the science ones, economics,
take like a route.
Yeah. So I was doing the science ones. So I was doing biology, chemistry, physics, maths, and then all the other subjects. So in those 3 years, after that, depending on what you get is what qualifies you to getting into uni, right? But what we do is in Sweden, I think you guys must have seen when they wear the hats. So the big celebration is when you graduate high school and when you finish that. And this is the conversation my brother and I was having. We were talking about how in Finland, for example, they do that graduation thing, but only the students that actually pass high school get to graduate. Whereas in Sweden, all the students get to graduate, even if they didn't pass. Do you get it? They get to have the ceremony. And I was saying, in my opinion, I don't like that because everyone's just okay with finishing school and celebrating when they're not working hard to finishing it. And then my brother, he was disagreeing. He was like, no, but Iman, everyone should have the right to celebrate finishing that many years of being in education. Because doing high school in Sweden, it's a choice. It's not compulsory. You don't have to do it. So those 3 years, you can do it if you want to, but you don't have to do it. So I was like, okay, if they want to celebrate finishing school, when they finish 9th grade, they can just celebrate that, which is like year 11 for you guys. So it's like they can celebrate that. So I was telling that to him, and I was like, this is so bad because the quality of their work is never going to be good. They're not going to be reaching to get better grades. They're not going to go further and stuff like that. So I just feel like there's something wrong with the whole education system when it comes to that. So I feel like sometimes maybe it's good to have the pressure, but like you were saying, maybe it's not when you every 2 years you're scared of doing bad and failing.
Yeah, I think a balance somewhere is needed.
100%.
Because what you have in this country is it's not just the fact that you've got so many exams. Things have changed a little bit now from how we were when we were younger. Yeah. But from as far back as what nursery you go to can determine your chances of success further.
That's crazy.
So and at each stage of your education journey, the institution you go to can have a massive impact on the trajectory of your future career.
That is
so
crazy.
Even your primary school, what primary school you go to, what secondary school you go to, what college you go to, all these different institutions. There are so many different, variations in quality, even between private and public. That the institution you go to can have a massive determining factor on whether you succeed or not. So existing in a society like Sweden, where it's the gap between the top and bottom.
Everyone's middle class in Sweden.
It's more middle. So what I like about that is this concept of equality of opportunity. And I don't think equality of outcome is something we can ever really achieve because we're all very different people. But I think the responsibility of the government is to try to make the equality of opportunity as equal as possible, and then it's up to you to do what you need to do.
If you want to do like anything further than what is the norm in Sweden, you can go to another country and do whatever you need to do.
And you're the perfect example. So now you've grown up in an environment at home that's very different to maybe the average student. So I'm guessing your approach to education was a bit different to someone who was just happy being just about So I think that's where the difference is, and I think that's where we should focus on. So I think and that's where the kind of that freedom of choice comes in. So each family, you inculcate the environment that you want. So if you're the kind of person that you want to achieve and you want to work hard, that's okay.
Because one thing I realized living here is as well that the whole what is it called, the social status thing. Whether you've graduated from uni or not is also a big deal here.
100%.
And I see like a lot of my friends. I've seen that with a lot of my friends that they just wanna. Some of them might not even be passionate about what they're studying, but they just want to be done, just to have a degree within it and just be done with it. At least I've finished it. You know. Whereas when I think about it in Sweden, they don't care. You see people having high roles and they never finished with the degree.
Even the mindset, like for example, now here in the UK, if you look at our generation and people from our culture, for example, so like most people who've gone to university want someone who's gone to university.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? As a partner or someone to get married to.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at A, Scandinavia, B, North America, going to university is not a big thing. If you have, perfect. If you haven't, okay. Do you know what I mean? Whereas here, there's some sort of a class system where, oh, you didn't go uni?
Like what are you doing with your life?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, Iman, just to kind of wrap up the what we're talking about in terms of your educational journey. Yeah. First of all, the thing about architecture, which I find fascinating, and I think a lot of people do as well, is this kind of attachment it has with design. So the fact that you have different design philosophies and how so many different things can impact your design philosophy. Whether it's art, whether it's building, whether it's even mathematics, whatever it is, so many things come into the design process of building all these things. And I remember listening to a few things on YouTube where these architects talk about their design inspirations and how they come how they built a certain building and the amount that goes into it, taking the mathematics to the side, but the amount of things that go into it and how holistic the process is, and how it borrows from so many different fields. I think it's I don't know if it's a unique field, but I think it's not a lot of fields are like that, where you borrow from so many different aspects of society, of our experiences, human beings, that informs what you do as a job, and that's a fascinating thing.
And one thing I realized with the pandemic was that as soon as COVID happened, best believe that everything started changing. We had to start incorporating in our studies, how would we start designing spaces in the future, like catering to distancing, social distancing. And then we were like, what is going on? So it was like, and then we started reading all these articles about how the architecture is going to change because of the pandemic, and how social spaces are going to change, and stuff like that. So that was just very interesting. Another thing I find really interesting in architecture is that what is it called? We get to study architectural history, so it's one of our modules as well. Okay. So when you were saying that they borrow from like different things and stuff like that, we get to study like the Western architecture, the Asian architecture and stuff like that. I would have loved to go and get into Islamic architecture, but we don't really focus on it because we're out here in the West. But my history teacher did touch on it in a little bit, and it's so interesting to see how like so many different countries have their own different styles, so many group of peoples, the religion, and how everything's just, it's just subhanAllah, it's so interesting to see how it's just all connected somehow.
It's fascinating. Well, it's fascinating.
It really is.
And just obviously Abu gets priority. Like inshallah, we can talk about some other buildings we can build in there. I would have a couple ideas.
No worries, definitely for sure.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make this journey a successful one, and I'm sure it's going to be a fascinating and incredibly successful career you're going to get into, inshallah. May Allah make that process easy for you, inshallah. Iman, if this wasn't enough, the polyglot wasn't enough. Mashallah, the remarkable study that she's doing isn't enough. You're also very active on social media.
Yes, I am.
And at last count, it's about 28, 29k?
28,
around about that.
on Instagram.
Is Instagram your main form of, or do you kind of...
The thing is...
So Iman, like, for the youth that want to study, I would say like the girls that want to study either architecture or engineering, what would your advice be to them like?
Okay, so I would say that first of all, get ready. It's a very difficult field. Yeah. But not only that, I feel like the studying part makes it hard, because if you look at the stats, I'm not really checked, but from what I've heard, when it comes to architecture, you have from the beginning of the year to the amount of people that graduate after they do the undergrad, you have so many people just leaving it, to be honest, you know. And the reasons is because drawing and like designing, it does take a lot of time. But if you're someone that's passionate about it, go for it 100%, because I feel like the passion is what is gonna make you stick with it. And especially if you're passionate about start to finish and just seeing the whole process and just wanting to see you completing your work and stuff like that, 100% go for it. But when you're stepping into it, you just have to be very patient and hardworking. That's the only thing I would say, honestly. And we need more girls in the field, so please, if you're into it, go for it. And I know a lot of people that started off not even thinking it would be their thing, and like I said before, you don't have to be the best one at drawing. You don't even have to know how to draw, to be honest. You just got to know that this is what you're into and this is what you want to make a career out of, and go for it.
Right.
That's what I would say.
If there's anyone who studies architectural engineering, or even just engineering or architecture, hit Iman up.
Yeah.
You lot can start like a community.
Yeah, we could. I would love to. I would love to. There's actually this, you guys should check it out. There's this podcast I came across recently. It's called 1 to 100. I don't know if you guys mind me mentioning.
No, you're going
That's fine. And it's called 1 to 100 Architecture, and it's a bunch of girls. I think there's 7 girls recently graduated from all kind of backgrounds, to be honest. I think there's one Muslim girl in it as well. And it's really nice to listen to, because they talk about like what got them into architecture, and then like what their specific style in architecture is and stuff like that. So whoever's interested in like knowing more about it from people that have actually finished it and are in the field, or actually, you know, there's a lot of people that do study architecture but actually end up not working as architects. They end up taking different routes in life. So I think a few of the girls are not even out of practice and stuff like that. So definitely check that out. And
been a fascinating conversation with you, and it's definitely it's the first, but definitely not the last. You know, we loved speaking with you and talking about your journey and all these different things. So thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you.
And thank you guys for watching. I'm not gonna make any promises for how regular we're gonna make these videos, but we are treating you guys with Look at the level of guests that we're bringing.
We've leveled up.
We leveled up. We put us nice.
Thank you guys.
Thank you again, Iman, for joining us. We're gonna put all her socials down below, so if you guys want to follow her journey, we do fully recommend that. Please do comment, like, and subscribe. Click the notification bell for our future videos, which will be coming. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.